servant leadership, being an example in faith, in action. Thank you. And with that, please join me in welcoming Donnie Smith to the stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, I'm going to spend about the next 30 minutes or so talking about the work we're doing in Africa. I want to talk a little bit about the why first, then I want to talk about the what. So, here's the why. In 1980, let's call this 1980, I graduated from the University of Tennessee with a BS in animal science. In that year, there were about 5 billion people on this planet. And according to FAO data, we produced about 2.4 trillion metric tons of food on this planet. Okay? So now let's fast forward through a 36-year career in the food business. It's 2017, 18. Today, there's about 7 billion people on this planet, and we produce about 4.5-ish trillion metric tons of food. So in my working career, called that this generation, we've added 2 billion people to the planet, and we've doubled the amount of food production on the planet to feed those 2 billion people. Okay? But let's think forward. Let's go from now to 2050. So in 2050, there will be somewhere around 9 billion people on this planet. And so if we had to add about 2.1 to 2.2 trillion metric tons of food production to feed 2 billion people from 1980 to present day, what will we have to do from present day to 2050? Another 2.2? No. As already been mentioned so far today, Rwanda's infant mortality rate is equal to the U.S. Infant mortality rates in Africa and in other parts of the world are improving dramatically. And during this period of time, infant mortality rates were dismal. So the calories per person, number one, people didn't live this long, and number two, the calories per person were much lower. So to add 2 billion more people on this planet, we're going to have to practically double food production from 4.5 trillion metric tons to 9. Same water, same air, same land mass. Huge problem. Of the 2 billion people that will populate this planet between present day and 2050, half of that will be on the continent of Africa. Incomes will continue to improve. Infant mortality rates will continue to improve. And we've got a huge, huge need for agricultural development and research in Africa. You know, as Scott was talking, it's just amazing the amount of progress that's been made in household incomes in the coffee business with smallholder farmers and millions of them around East Africa and other parts of Africa. And that story can be true in a lot of verticals. Think about this. Today, here in the U.S., we spend probably less than 7%, certainly less than 10% of our disposable income on food. Think about the economic development that frees up in terms of, national security. But now, let's get to Africa, where it is not at all uncommon for many African countries to have an average population spending 40, maybe 50% of their income on food. And that's the average population. Think about the base of the economic pyramid. We deal with farmers that are subsistence farmers that spend 60, 70, 80+% of any money they make just to be able to feed themselves. What if they could be positioned to where they would spend less than 20% of their household income on food. How much economic development would that spur? Wow. Now that's a lofty effort. I've spent 36 years in the food business. I will spend the rest of my life dealing with sustainable agriculture in Africa because it's critical to what will happen in the next 35 or 40 years. Let me tell you a little bit about what we do. So back in about 2012, Dale Dawson and I had lunch, and Janice Huffman, who's sitting right back here, had begun a work, yay! Had begun work in Africa to support sustainable agriculture, particularly table eggs, to support an organization called oneegg.org. Don't know if you know oneegg.org, but the mission of One Egg is to get 1 egg a day in the mouths of preschool kids. And you would be amazed at what just that much protein, 7 grams maybe in an egg, what that much protein will do to the cognitive and physical development of these children as they enter their school years. And so with the support of Tyson and Cobb Vantris, we began this work in Africa to support a farm that would become sustainable over time, that would grow these chickens, have these eggs, and provide them to oneegg.org. That farm is now a part of Zamura, which is a business that we operate in Rwanda. Now, back to the conversation with Dale. So I'm having this conversation with Dale, and I want to do some demonstration farms and help farmers understand better agronomic practices and that kind of thing. And he said, well, I'm involved with a group of folks that have a agriculture business, and I want to tell you, Donnie, a big problem is feed. And by the way, it was mentioned earlier today, right? And he said, don't you have some feed in your background? I said, yeah, ran a couple feed mills for the company back in the early days. He said, who knows what God might be doing? So I took a trip with him, sat down with the Minister of Agriculture, told her about my dream of having demonstration farms, and frankly, she kind of rolled her eyes and said, I got demonstration farms all over this country. I said, well, what do you need? I need a feed mill. Okay, I'll build you a feed mill. So before I left, we're having dinner at this big table, and I get back home, and Gary Michelson in our communications group comes to see me, and he says, Donnie, I want you to read this blog. And there was some guy in the restaurant's called Heaven. There was some guy at Heaven overhearing our conversation who basically said, can you believe it? Not only does this greedy guy, he can't make enough money. Now he's going to go to Africa and make money off the backs of poor Rwandans. Well, that's encouraging when you're trying to do good for the world, right? So Terry and I talked, and we said, you know what? We'll start a foundation, and we'll put all of our businesses in Rwanda in this foundation, and nobody will ever say, I'm trying to get rich off poor Rwandans, because we won't get a dime of economic benefit for what we're doing. So that's what we did. We formed the African Sustainable Agriculture Project. And you know, at the time I was the CEO of Tyson, and I really didn't want people thinking that, you know, number one, I'm spreading the wings of Tyson's into Rwanda. Oh, I just want to help people. And the Rwandans, they, you know, like many other African countries, great people, good resources, need opportunity. So we formed African Sustainable Agriculture Project, ASAP Foundation, and off we went. In 2014, I think it was about October, we opened the first commercial feed mill in the nation of Rwanda. Now, to get a picture, Rwanda is about the size of Northwest Arkansas with about 12 million people. Now, those of us who kind of grew up in the country and know what it's like to go to the co-op and buy a bag of feed, imagine no co-op, no commercial feed. And you know, it's interesting. God puts this great potential into the genetics of these animals. But, you know, it's sort of like, you know, a Formula One race car. If you're you're pouring kerosene in, it's not going to run very well, right? And so you need well-mixed, well-formulated feed in order for that animal in which God puts all this genetic potential to be able to fulfill its potential and to do what God created it to do. And so as we looked at the poultry value chain, the first limiting factor in the process was feed mill. So we, solved that problem. Now Rwanda has plenty of feeding capacity. So not long after that, we absorbed what was then called Ikararo Farms. Now it's Zamora Farms. So we have an egg farm. But we always had this idea that, we could help reach a lot of farmers at the very base of the pyramid with broiler chickens, the chickens that we eat. So with the help of USAID, and by the way, Americans, thank you very much for your help. So with the help of USAID, we began a project, Tuore Nkoko Twanguke, which in Rwanda, that means let's raise chickens for profit. So we started this project, and as simple as it is, on about the area of this stage, we will go on to a smallholder farm. And by the way, a lot of the smallholder farmers that we work with, this is about the size of the yard that they have to work with. Very, very small plot of land. So you need to concentrate the agriculture on that land, right? So with a very small plot, we put about 100 chickens in this area, and we grow them about 6 weeks. Now what we do is we supply the capital to build the coop to keep them safe, right? And we provide them the equipment they need to feed and water their chickens. And in about 6 weeks, we've got a broiler ready for market. We help them market their broilers. And they get about 3 years to pay the coop back. And then we help them with microfinance so that they can take care of the reoccurring costs, the charcoal to heat the chickens, the feed, the chicks themselves, that sort of thing. And so how are we doing? We have about 120 growers in the program now. We bring them into a demonstration farm where basically we have 10 of these coops in a U shape, and we can walk them through, here's what it needs to look like the day before you get chickens. And then here's what a coop full of day-old chicks looks like. And here's what a coop of chickens that are 1 week old, 2 weeks old, 3, 4, 5, 6, clean out, get ready again. Right? And so in about 3 or 4 days, we can bring growers in and teach them everything they need to know about how to be successful. Now, to get a picture of some of the growers that we're working with, the average grower in the rural areas in Rwanda, the average person in rural Rwanda, the household size is about 5.2. The average household income, $27 a month. You stop by the convenience store and get a Coke on the way into the conference this morning? You spent about $1.50 doing that, right? That's a day and a half, maybe almost 2 days worth of income for the growers that we work with. But with a little help on the capital side, a lot of help on understanding how to create a new business, we've been able to see growers like Frazine. I go up to Frazine's coop. She's so proud of it. And by the way, I look in and it's perfect. It looks just like the training coops that we see at our demonstration farm. She does a great job. 2 of her children, real small children, are there with her. When she goes into the coop, she does the biosecurity measures just like we teach her to. Everything's perfect. So I talked to Frazine. Frazine, household income, about 40,000 Rwanda francs, which is a little better than the average that I mentioned before, but not by much. Maybe $1, $1.10, $1.15 a day. So I asked Frazine, I said, how'd you do on your last grow out? Well, in 6 weeks, and we have 2 weeks to clean out, in that 8-week period, she made 84,000 Rwandan francs, which is double her household income. So I said, Frazine, what'd you do with the money? Well, first thing she did, like Scott said, she upgraded her diet. They did eat 1 chicken, but she said her children didn't like chicken. I just don't understand that. but she bought beans, which is an important protein source for her young children. The second thing she did, she went and bought a cow, and from the government you can get, there's a subsidy to buy a pregnant cow. So she brought a pregnant cow and she took it to her sister's house, and her sister is gonna feed the cow until it calves. And for that, the compensation for doing that will be the calf. So her sister will get the calf, she'll bring the cow back home and have a second source of nutrients for her family, fresh milk. She can get the cow artificially inseminated once a year, and she'll get a calf a year. So think about the economic development that a $625 investment in a little chicken coop about this size has created for her family. That's just the first grow out. The second grow out, she was going to do some improvements on her home. She had some much needed things that need to be happening. The next, she was going to create another business. Think about that. Think about the economic development that's possible with just a little bit of capital and a little bit of knowledge about how to do something that they don't know how to do. I was in a conversation not long ago with a group, consulting group out of Europe, who's actually working in Rwanda to kind of accelerate economic development. And one of the things they were focusing on was job creation, which is absolutely important, right? But they were filtering their projects based on how many jobs it created. Now, by the way, everything we do in Rwanda is run by Rwandans. You'll hear about, Dale talk about the bridge to Rwanda later. I have 2 Rwandans that were educated here in the U.S., Matthew and Rita, that are at home running what we do in Rwanda. Any other businesses, and I'll tell you about a couple here in a second that we're about to start, those businesses will be run. Now, all of this is held inside of a 501c3, but these are all registered businesses in Rwanda, and we treat them as such. I just don't want to get any economic benefit from what we're doing in ASAP. So anyways, I was in this conversation. I said, whoa, wait a minute. I want to create more jobs. But if we could create a business that didn't necessarily create a bunch of jobs, but that would open up another process limiting factor for economic development, wouldn't that be just as beneficial to the country? Well, tell me more. Well, in animal agriculture, 65% of the cost of producing that chicken is your feed. The overwhelming majority of that is corn and soybeans. Now, in Rwanda, you can get 2 crops a year. But in Rwanda, they are plagued with the problem of importing very poor quality seeds, and they always get their seeds to their farmers late. So you can't plant on time, and in agriculture, you got to do stuff on time. But they can't do that on time. And when they do, they have horrible germination rates. And so a key to being able to help farmers be able to produce enough corn and soybeans to be able to help the animal agriculture, eggs, maybe even swine, dairy, chickens, you name it, to be able to thrive and provide affordable food. Remember that key statistic about how much of their money is spent on food versus how much of your money is spent on food. That could be poured into economic development if we can solve this affordable food problem. But yet, we want lower feed grain prices, but we don't want the farmer to be hurt. We don't want the corn farmer, soybean farmer to be hurt to help the animal farmer. We want everybody to win. Well, how do you do that? Great quality seeds that will actually germinate, that get to the farmer on time, coupled with some training and agronomic practices, just like we've proven we can do in poultry, so that they will get much, much higher yields, and they will be then able to sell corn at a cheaper price and make more money and make the whole supply chain more sustainable. That's what we're working on. Another problem, another limiting factor, chick quality, working on a hatchery. Again, all these businesses will be run by Rwandans in Rwanda. All they need is some capital investment. One last thing before I stop, because I really want you to hear Dale's story, because Dale's story of capacity building is critical to helping the continent of Africa succeed and to be very successful 50 years from now, or 36 years from now. But I'm also commercially involved because, again, I have this passion for affordable food in Africa. So after I left Tyson, I'm now invested in a day-old chicken feed business with operations in Tanzania, Botswana, Mozambique. We sell day-old chicks all over Africa. And again, I'm going to spend the rest of my life involved in affordable food on this continent because this continent needs it. I'm called to do it. And the resources are there if they just get a little help with a little know-how, a little technical expertise, and a little bit of capital. And that's a great, great investment. Thank you.